Alright guys, welcome. We're going to talk quickly here about the Chinese Communist Revolution. Really, this occurred in two parts. The first part prior to World War II, the second part after World War II. It is a little disjointed of a discussion because it's pretty complicated. So I'm just going to give you an overview, and then from this overview you can kind of, if you want more information, look it up to round out your knowledge. Really, the revolution started with the overthrow of the Qing Dynasty. It's spelled with a Q here, but it's pronounced Qing. This was led by the Nationalist Party of Sun Yat-sen. They wanted to modernize China. They were upset with the foreign influence in China that had occurred in the later 1800s into the 1900s. And they established something called the Kuomintang government. It's a Chinese word, Kuomintang here. Obviously, that's been transliterated into English, so you could see it's spelled with a G or a Q. It's really pronounced with a G, the Kuomintang government. His process, he had a military takeover, then he wanted to prepare for democratic rule, and then eventually he hoped to set up a constitutional democracy, but soon didn't have the military knowledge necessary, and he was dependent upon some military figures, and a guy named Yuan, General Yuan, I believe Shikai, Yuan Shigai, depending how you want to pronounce him. He ended up becoming president. Sun was president for 6 weeks. Then they looked to this military. The military ended up taking over, and Sun fled for his life. All right, what he was all about when he was president, again, is people's rights and democracy, which is not two items that you often associate China with, and economic security. Unfortunately, he didn't get it. This guy, General Shikai, took over. He set up a dictatorship. He was hated. General Shikai wanted to reestablish a imperial monarchy. The nationalist government left over. The Kuomintang government fought him. There was a really civil war. Yuan died as a result, and all hell broke loose in China. There's really no other way to say it. You had local warlords in charge. Peasants were suffering. People were getting killed. No real government. Then you have the end of World War I, where Japan was given a big chunk of Manchuria, and the May 4th movement, which resulted in the beginning of a communist movement in China. Now, after Yuan died, a young guy named Chiang Kai-shek took over the Kuomintang government, and the Kuomintang government was, in theory, in charge of China. They had all these local warlords in charge as well. Amidst all this chaos, you had the May 4th movement come about, which was communism. Now, the Russian Revolution sparked communism in the middle of World War I, led by a guy, the Bolsheviks, led by a guy named Lenin. A bunch of peasants and really a couple intellectual leaders looked at Lenin's view of communism, adapted that for China, and started this May 4th movement. And Lenin supported this. Now that he had control of China, he would not want nothing more than have a big, huge communist state right next to him in China. So Chiang Kai-shek takes over the national government, and now he kind of consolidates his power, gets rid of the warlords, and you have two groups vying for overall control of China. You have the Kuomintang government led by Chiang Kai-shek, and you have the communist government that it doesn't really have a central leader of yet. And there is a civil war that breaks out again. So they've had pretty much nonstop war. A young guy at the time, he was very young, named Mao Zedong, was one of the communist leaders. He was very good at enrolling the peasants. Chiang Kai-shek got most of his control in the cities, didn't get a lot of control from the peasants. So the peasants ended up siding with Mao, and that's really why Mao ends up eventually winning. Now, Mao, again, is just one of the leaders. But in 1930, there's a full-on civil war going on. It's guerrilla warfare. It's not open warfare. It's hit-and-run tactics. Again, what we would call these guys say would be insurgents. The Kuomintang was the national government. They had the actual army. Mao and the rest of the communists had a peasant army. So the Kuomintangs wanted to get rid of the communists once and for all. They had an army of 700,000 well-armed troops. They attack the Red Army of the Communists. Mao and the other leaders flee with 100,000 men. They go on something called the Long March. This goes on for about a year. It's a 6,000-mile journey. It's basically a gigantic chase. Only 8,000 communists make it out of the Long March alive. One of them is Mao, and when the Long March is over, Mao is in charge, and he becomes the leader of the communist movement in China. Here's a look at the Long March. It is hard to get the scale, but again, 6,000 miles is like for one of us to walk from San Diego to Washington, D.C. and back in a year. So it's a tremendously long distance. All the while, you're getting chased by these nationalist troops, shooting you. They're fording rivers. It went through 11 provinces, through mountain ranges and rivers, all through China. And if you look at this slide, it gives you just a representation, if this works here, of the Long March. There it goes. So you can see how it goes. It wasn't a straight line. They doubled back on themselves, and it ended up going pretty much all through central China. Most of the people die. The Mao, his army is basically gone, but they have a core group there, and luckily for Mao, really, is Japan invades China. This is the start of World War II. Japan launches an all-out invasion. They are incredibly brutal, and both Mao and Chiang Kai-shek realize that they have a common enemy that is perhaps more dangerous to them, and they don't really join forces as much, but they put the Civil War on hold to attack the Japanese, and that's what occurs. Now, during this time period, Mao is able to recoup his losses and consolidate power, and when World War II ends, boom, the Civil War is back on again, and Mao ends up prevailing. That's really the Chinese Revolution Part 2. Here is the Japanese Empire. We're talking about everything here in yellow. This is Manchuria, and this is really the area that Japan invaded. They already had Manchuria, but they come in and invade this territory, and this is a gigantic threat, and that is really what holds off the end of the Civil War until after World War II.